right, welcome back to the Balas and Skene show. Another edition, another year. Skene's looking a little fuzzy. I think he's on his dial-up or something like that.
No,
hopefully
I'm
the picture
not.
clears up a little bit. So, got the Drew Carey glasses on. We're good to go, man. This feels like old times here, and it's been too long. It's been too long since we've done one of these. We finally figured out what we're doing. As you get a bit older, the technology gets a little bit tougher, right? At least from my point of view. I don't think for Skene, but voting season over, man. What are we doing here?
That's close.
Settlement one was back.
The first day of fall is September 22nd, I think. So there's still a few weeks left of summer here. It's not over with yet, but it's getting close. Obviously, It's a little snappy cold now at night, so it's coming.
Yeah. How's the season been, the boating season? Good water, good weather?
After July finally got going, it was beautiful. It was really nice up north, but it was cold right to the end of June. Even golfing weather not all that great because it was kind of the wind blew out of the north and it was chilly. But hey, it's what we do here in Michigan. We make the best of it. I know you were up north there. You got on the lake over there at Torch with your family, so it's pretty nice.
That was amazing. Everything was great. And for those who don't know, Skene actually shot 73 at Agaming in 40-degree weather with what do you want to talk about, a nip in the air. And that was back in, I think, May. It was crazy. So we got him the flag, the little flag to remember it by, an unbelievable round. And it was fun to watch. So, but let's talk football, man, because here we are. And a lot of question marks around this Michigan team. And it's funny. You say 9-3 to people and borderline playoff, and you got half of a segment that thinks you're nuts, and then you got for being pessimistic, and then you got the other half that says there's no way, you're always so negative, Balas, and it's going to be 10-2 or 11-1 with a true freshman quarterback, and all these questions on the offensive line and at receiver. So where are you, man, heading into this year? Your thoughts on what your expectations are for this season?
Well, we talked about it when we were golfing earlier this year, Balas. I'm somewhere between 9-3 and down to 8-4, and for two reasons. The two reasons why I kind of waffle back and forth, and they're kind of good and bad. Bad's not good. It's uncertain. So, yeah, we all know that college football is a quarterback-driven sport. If you don't have a good one, you are going to struggle, as we saw offensively last year. And if you combine that with an offensive line that struggles to be effective in protecting the quarterback, first down yardage, and effectively running the ground game to take pressure off the passing game, it's offensively a mess. And I don't want to go back to talk about it too much from last year, Balas, but as you know, Michigan offensively finished third from the bottom in all of college football offensively, right above the military academies in passing effectiveness. But overall offense, we finished 129th out of 133 teams. So I put that in the terrible market. So to think that it's just going to magically turn around and suddenly be this wonderful offensive juggernaut, I have my reservations. However, the talent alone that's going to be at this quarterback position, we have not seen. Maybe just the raw physical talent out of this kid, Balas. I don't know that we've ever seen this kind of talent at the position. So that's really encouraging. Number two, every year is different. Every team is different. And this offensive line that has the talent can be more aggressive and more vicious in its nature of going about things and protecting the quarterback. And the third thing that leans me more toward the 9-3 world is we've got a new offensive coordinator who's, I think, is going to bring a little more balance and a little more dynamic nature to the offensive passing attack. And so those things, if they go well, this is a 9-3 football team because the defense should be absolutely good. If they struggle, if the freshman realizes, this isn't high school football anymore, and start making some mistakes, or this offensive line doesn't go well, or they don't adapt to this new offensive coordinator's plan, then we could slip back and be 8-4. But the defense should be so good that we should not be any worse than 8-4.
I agree with that. And I'm leaning more towards, if you gave me a choice between 10-2 and 8-4, I'm leaning 10-2 only because of what we've heard about this defense in the run game. And we've heard good things about this offensive line in the run game. In the pass game, maybe not as much. So you wonder if there are going to be some RPOs. How do RPOs help an offensive line? And I read online from a coach that said, look, with an RPO, the defensive line is essentially preparing or stacking up against a run, right? That could be a run or a pass. So they're basically playing run. They're not getting upfield. Is that a good way to protect the quarterback a little bit if you can establish some of those RPOs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of, it comes in the same neighborhood as play action, right? So if I'm an offensive lineman running RPO, the only thing that matters to me is the R. I'm running my pass blocking or my run blocking scheme. I'm trying to get to linebackers because if the ball is thrown, it's going to be before I get downfield anyway. So it's an easier frame set of mind for the offensive line to just run your base run play and get after it and get those linebackers to suck up and make it look like run. And if it goes well, then the ball's going to come out of there. And so it's very similar to running play action in that when you establish a strong ground game, you get linebackers flowing hard. You get guys that want to play off the tips of their toes and come at you. Then you throw right over their head. So, it's the RPO is the modern day version of, the option, the play action off of 46 and 47G. But as an offensive lineman, the basics are the same. You got to get out of your stance and get after people and move them.
Yep. He's Doug Skene, Michigan's five-time Big Ten champion. I mix these up all the time, and former All Big Ten offensive lineman from the University of Michigan, coming across like Max Headroom a little bit. Remember Max Headroom in the 80s for the old people with all the delays? But we'll fix that in week 2. So these are the week 1 things that have to get worked out here before the season starts. But Skene, looking at this line, the 2 things that worry me, I guess. Number 1, you've got a guy coming back in Greg Crippen at center, who was okay last year at times, lost his starting job, though, before the year to a guy that had moved over from defensive line a couple years earlier. And then you've got a guy in Gio El-Hadi who did not perform to expectations at right guard. You move him back to left, and everybody says, okay, everything's good now. But it starts with the veterans who still, in my opinion, have a lot to prove.
Well, it absolutely does, Balas. And I guess the one thing I would say, having gone through it, I think that there's a maturing process. There's time over the course of the offseason to go back and reevaluate yourself. You can watch every snap, every step on film. And I'm assuming these young men have done that to see where your biggest areas of improvement are. And you work on those through the course of the offseason. And you come into this season with this is it. It's now or never attitude, and you can have a wonderful season. I kind of, look at my own career that same way. I had one shot at the end of my time in Ann Arbor, and I made the most of it. You just kind of let it fly and go attack people. And both of these guys are certainly capable of that. But the concerning part and the hesitation is we haven't seen it yet for this entire unit, the 5 guys collectively. And last year, I'll keep saying it, again, last year, they were nowhere near good enough to meet the expectation of what that offense needed. And with a more dynamic offense, with a new offensive coordinator, this offensive line has got to be tenfold better than it was a year ago. And I'm not talking about statistically, and those things do matter, keeping people off your quarterback, but just the way they execute their plays, they have to be more aggressive. And I'm not talking about stupid, post-snap penalties and stuff like that, although 1 or 2 of those would be nice to see. I'm talking about just the overall way at which you approach your job is to not just block people, but take their soul away, Balas. You've talked about this before. There's an intent there that can have a debilitating effect on a defensive front. It's hard to describe it, but these guys are fully capable of doing it. They just have to find a way to get that mentality flowing in the huddle there. It's like sharks around blood in the water, This is what this unit needs to be like. They need to feast on it, on an opposing defensive front, and make them wonder if they want to keep playing.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. You had the surprise starter last year with Dom Jadis moving past Greg Crippen at center. This year, Brady Norton, a transfer from out west, comes in from a smaller school. And Nathan Afobe is the guy that we've been hearing about and has the body, seems to have the strength. And all of a sudden, Brady Norton has passed him on the depth chart and will start that game. They say Afobe will play. Is that a red flag that some of these fans are making it out to be? Or is this just a case of, okay, well, it's good news because they let the guys work it out and the cream rises to the top, so to speak. And It wasn't fair competition. You had 4 guys working there. I think a lot of people, including me, hoped that Afobe would take it and run with it just because he's got that strength, because he's got that look. But when somebody loses that job or wins it in the last week of fall camp like that, it's not the guy you expected. How big a concern is that?
It's not a concern for me at all for 2 reasons. These guys have been evaluated going back to spring as much as they could have been, and certainly the offseason conditioning. What kind of condition do you show up in the fall? That factors in, but ultimately, every rep in practice is evaluated by the staff and ultimately the head coach, and those guys make those collaboration meetings happen to find out who's going to be the starter. So there's no shortage of evaluation. The best 5 guys are going to start. So that doesn't worry me. In the age of transfer portal, as much as we'd like to see a young guy come in, develop into these ass-kicking players that we've seen over the decades, it's just not the way it works anymore. So yeah, in the last 5 years, we've seen a guy come in and become a great player for Michigan in the offensive line. We've had a few in the last few seasons that are outstanding, and we can list off the names. But it's just the nature of the business, Balas. So it is what it is, and it doesn't concern me at all. A guy can step in there and be an ass kicker, and he wasn't here last year. Oh well. So it's absolutely possible, and we'll see it. The other good thing is that if it was that close with 3 or 4 guys, then you got more than 5 that can step in and play. And you have to have, I've said this over the years, you have to have 7. You got 5 starters on the field, but you better have 2 that are ready to go in any one of those slots, and there's no drop off. And it sounds like Michigan's going to have that.
Maybe without Andrew Babalola in there, the true freshman who was really making strides, season-ending knee injury. So now you're a little bit thin at tackle, and they really need a guy like Blake Frazier to step up and say, hey, it's my time. He's been banged up, right? He is going to play, according to Sharon Moore, and he could play at guard. And I was talking to John Jansen last week, and he said, from what he had seen at right guard, he said it would be really good if Blake Frazier gets back in there and really starts competing there too, because one of the things he said was, for a while there, it looked like Afobe by default. There was nobody that was really grabbing that position. And I think that's very clear if you're going to be playing 2 guys anyway, as Sharon Moore said he was. But then he said Blake Frazier would play too. So they need to get him ready at tackle too, because right now you've got 2 guys in Andrew Sprague, who I think is going to be fantastic eventually and will be probably pretty good this year. You got Evan Link, who's still a big question mark there at left tackle. And then you got Blake Frazier, and then not a whole lot of options. So a little bit thin there, but your thoughts on Link at left tackle after struggling at right in pass protection? Is this a guy that, boy, you're pinning your hopes on a guy moving him from that position to left? They say he's more comfortable there, but that's the biggest one on the field, right?
Well, it certainly traditionally has been, but going back and watching Link last year, Balas, and we can go back and I can call out certain plays. This dude's got all the athleticism you could possibly need to be successful at the position. He's got the height, he's got the length, he can move with anybody out there on that field. In pass protection, what I thought was his biggest area for improvement was he'd get bent at the waist, especially on a wide rush. He would his feet would stall, and he'd get his nose would get out over his feet. And whenever you bend at the waist as an offensive lineman in pass pro, you're done. You're cooked. You're going to give up a pressure or a hit or worse. And just a few key moments, he wanted to lean forward with that nose. And a lot of offensive line coaches in some of the drills that I was associated with, offensive linemen in practice, you take your helmet off and you got a pass block with no helmet on. And guess what you do when you have to do that technique with no helmet on, Balas? You keep your head back and your hands out, which is what pass blocking is all about. You can't get bent at the waist. So that doesn't seem like all that much to ask of a guy who's as athletic as Link. Just stop bending at the waist, dude, and keep on your nimble feet, which you have. God has blessed you with these abilities, and I think he'll be fine over there. I don't know how much experience he's got before his Michigan time at left tackle. You say he's more comfortable over there at left. All right, is he left-handed? Does he just like his right foot forward, his left foot back in a stance? Whatever it is, I don't care. It can be done. Guys have done it. Al Hadi's going to do it going from right to left. You do switch your alignment in your stance. As long as you're comfortable, you're fine. Let me ask you this, Balas. Is Link right-handed? Do we know if Evan Link is right-handed?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Well, find out, because if in my opinion, if you're right hand dominant, you want to play on the left side of the offensive line because it's your right hand that'll flatten off guys going to the inside, and it's your right hand that pass blocks, because if you got an edge rusher trying to attack your left shoulder, you want to keep your left shoulder back, and your right hand is the post arm that's going to keep him wide and stable. And so ask him, find out which hand he is, and if he is right-handed, that bodes well for him having success at left tackle.
I'll do that. And Blake Frazier is a guy that's intriguing. He's added a lot of good weight. He's been banged up here for really the better part of his career so far. So starting to get back into it. I talked to Jansen last week. He said he was really starting to go full go probably a week and a half ago or something like that. So he's got some catching up to do, but he's got that potential to be a really good lineman. I'm going to ask you, did you ever play with any Michigan legacies in your 5 years at Michigan? I'm trying to think of the guys whose dads might have played there, because there's one thing that they've all had in common, Skene, when I interview these guys, whether it's Troy Woolfolk, whether it is Blake Frazier, whether it's Aiden Hutchinson, as you would know, there is a little something extra there, a little more pride where, okay, not only I'm not going to want to let my university down, I don't want to let my dad down and his legacy and everything he taught me about what it means to be a Michigan man and to play here. So I get that sense from these guys, and that's what kind of excites me about Blake Frazier. And I remember you and I say this all the time, when you and I talked for our first Where Are They Now, and it must have been our first conversation, it must have been 20 years ago at least now, and you said there's something that makes you sleep better at night knowing that there are these Michigan guys in the building, whether it's Jim Harbaugh, whether it's Lloyd Carr going way back, guys with ties to Bo Schembechler. That means a little something, doesn't it?
Well, it means something because chances are they've been through a championship season and they know what it takes and they know what the team culture is inside the building. So if that's already built in, then that just puts you further ahead in understanding your role as a part of the team. You know, in my experience, in my opinion, is all the things about these legacy guys, these young men that are the children of these former Michigan players. The one thing that stands out to me, and you could ask young Frazier the same thing, not only do they not want to let their dad down or let their teammates down, they want to do better than what their dad did when they were there. I know Aiden, that drove Aiden a lot. He wanted to outdo Chris, and I think it's safe to say he did that. And Chris is happy that he did that. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's a driving, it's a a competitive nature between a father and son out there, and so I would guess that it's no different with Frazier. And Frazier's dad was a really good offensive lineman at Michigan. So there's somewhere in there that's probably burning a little bit. And I'm guessing this is no different with him.
Yeah, we all want our sons to be more successful than we are. So, and yours is doing pretty well too, as a matter of fact, and starting to beat you on the golf course, from what I understand, or getting damn close.
Well, he's playing grown-up golf now, Balas. He's no longer trying to bomb at 400 yards. He's happy at 280 to 290 in the fairway. And I told my wife, I told Tracy, I said, I'm dust. Because he's better short game than me. He can putt better than me and everything else. Wow. He's always been better at me, but he just couldn't find his way to the fairway and the green. Now that he's doing that, yeah, I'm probably in trouble on the golf course with him, but he's doing very well.
So are you happy about that part, that he's going to be playing golf? Come on. All right. All right.
So I've told Nathan, and I'll tell anybody, I don't mind getting beat by someone who's just better than me and just plays better. And it's a respect that goes, the silly golf game for amateur golfers like us, or if you watch a college football game or your favorite pro team, not that it's okay. Losing is not okay. No one's ever going to say that. But if you lose to someone who just makes more plays than you, and they did it fair and square, and it's just legit, and you just kind of have to tip your hat and go, you know what, you just beat me because today you were better, right? And that's kind of how I feel about playing golf. Even looking back on some of the football games that my most terrible losses that I was ever a part of, that Michigan State game in 1990 still burns me because the no call on Desmond. We should have won the game. And I don't feel like they were the better team that day. They just got away with a little bit more. And I'll always carry that with me, which is kind of sad at this point in my life. These are the kinds of things that sting forever. Yeah, it is what it is, so I'm fine with it. But I guess it's a way for me to rationalize losing, and you break things down. When the emotion comes down and you go back and you watch the film, did you lose because you failed to meet the expectation of your role, or did you lose because someone just did it better than you? And there is a difference.
Or or played with outside the rules. That's why I never have a problem losing to you. So I know I'm going to lose. I'm out there just trying to have fun. So, but when you don't play a whole lot, it's kind of hard to do. So,
but you have unrealistic expectations, Balas. You play twice a year, and you think you're going to shoot 78.
Well, no, I don't think I'm going to shoot 78, but I'd like to get the ball in the air, So, all right, back to football, and let's talk about this defense. All right. Well, first, let's talk about these backs, right? I was watching the clips of Jordan Marshall against Alabama, and people were talking about how angry he was running and how he didn't go down on first contact, and like he had something to prove. And he had to that day, Skene, because as much as people talk about the improved offensive line at the end of the year, I think 83 of his 100 yards came after contact.
Yeah,
right.
That was tough run.
I was not seeing the vast improvement in the Ohio State and Alabama games. Like, oh, we really put it together. No, that offense still stunk in a lot of ways in those two games. Were they a little bit better? Maybe. And was Evan Link a little bit better in that Alabama game on the left side than he was on the right side all year? Probably. But I didn't see the vast improvement. What I saw was a running back in basically Khalil Mullings had the play of the game against Ohio State when he was stopped at the line of scrimmage and breaks free for 30 of his whatever yards, right? So, and then I saw Jordan Marshall breaking all these tackles against Alabama and thinking that is a Big Ten running back there. So your thoughts on him and with Justice Haynes right behind him, they got two guys. You need two guys, number one. And then I will add to that, how worrisome is it if they don't have a number three?
Well, it's always a concern. Depth is always a concern. That goes no matter what. So you got to keep these guys healthy. And that's part of the balance of a two-back offense now in all major NFL and even in college for sure. You got to have two guys that can carry the load, not just one. But the way that the ball was ran in that Alabama bowl game, it kind of reminds me of the way I like to see offensive line execute their assignments. If you're a running back and you're given the ball and you're expected to hit a gap, or you can pick between 2 or 3 gaps, or if it's a zone play, you can cut it all the way backside. Whatever the assignment is, who cares? But when you run the ball angry and you run the ball pissed off with a chip on your shoulder, that's what it looks like in that Alabama game. It could be because you're competing to keep the job or you want to be the man. It doesn't matter. The result is you're running pissed off and you're running angry. And you're going to run through people when you feel that way with the ball in your hand. And that's what it looked like to me. If that's how these backs run the football, we're going to be just fine.
Yeah. And Brandon Miner was that guy years ago. And he ran hard, but he didn't run smart, right? He kind of put himself in harm's way. So I'm sure the coaches will teach these guys, you lead with the pads, so on and so forth. And if you can avoid contact at times, if you're on the sideline or something like that, you got to protect your body a little bit. But that was not in Jordan Marshall's DNA, at least in that Alabama game. I love what I've heard about him. So let's talk about the defense here.
Well, hang on. One more thing about running backs.
Yes. Yep.
It's equally as important. And Freddie Jackson once told me this. When they come out of high school, they can all run with the football. Yeah. The difference between how effective they are at the Big Ten level is how do they play without the football. And so in pass protection, Balas, as you know, the offensive line is responsible for half of the offensive line or the defensive blitz pickup, and the back has to pick up the other side. That's typical pass protection. And so either or both of these running backs had better be damn good at putting their nose right through a linebacker's chest.
Yep.
Or cutting their legs in half when they come through on a blitz like Blake Corum did so well for so many years. If they can do that and run pissed off, if they can block as pissed off as they appear to run with the football, again, we're going to be just fine.
And that's why I always put Mike Hart up there among the best Michigan backs I ever saw, because he sacrificed his body so often. I don't remember him missing a blitz pickup or an assignment when it came to blocking from his freshman year on, and that made him pretty special. And I think that's a good part of the reason why Blake Corum was the same way, right? You're learning from a guy like that. So, but I did talk to Fred Jackson about that actually this summer, and he said these guys are really picking it up and are really embracing that role. They're also good pass catchers. So I think you're going to see more of them in the pass game. I love Chip Lindsey, everything I've heard about him. But, we talk about scheming wide receivers open and things like that. This wide receiving core still has plenty to prove too. If you look at Donovan McCulley, comes over from Indiana. He's by far the number one guy from what we've heard. Samaj Morgan, number 2. Channing Goodwin, Jonathan Goodwin's son, is number 3 as a surprise, another legacy, which excites me a little bit. You wonder, okay, does that mean Fred Moore didn't live up to expectations because we expected him to take the next step, but he's going to play too. So still, though, a lot to prove there, in my opinion, especially when you don't have a guy like Colston Loveland at tight end that is almost like another big wide receiver out there.
As great as it was to have a weapon like Loveland in there, this trio in a typical set, these 3 or 4 guys have got to find a way to elevate, to mix things up. Because if I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm going to defend the Michigan passing offense, and I know your threat is from one dude, that's not hard to defend. It's just not. And so the basics of having an effective passing game with your guys on the edge of your offense is the same basics as me, successfully gap blocking, a nose tackle to a backside linebacker. You've got to execute your technique. You got to get your body in shape to be able to physically handle the load. And you got to execute your technique to get open and get some separation. You got to be an effective route runner. And effective route runners are the guys that make those tiny little adjustments in their route. They get a little pressure before they break. They use their head and their feet to create space. And it just seems like the Michigan offense has not been able to do that effectively nearly enough in the last couple seasons with enough guys. And so if this offense can develop into a multiple threat where our young quarterback can put the ball in any one of a few places, now if a defensive coordinator has lots of problems to worry about. And again, pass protection is required in order for this to develop and for this to happen. But if these wide receivers can do what they need to do to get the space, whether it's rub routes or just playing more physical, I don't really care. I don't think anybody cares. I don't think Coach Lindsey cares.
Yeah.
But you got to get open and let this quarterback put the ball where it belongs. And then now you got balance, right? Now you can run the football or be a dynamic attack through the air. And last year, one of the reasons we stunk as bad as we did offensively is because there was no balance and we were very predictable.
Yeah, no question. There is concern that if you let Bryce Underwood run, and he's obviously a weapon with his feet, and I asked Sharon Moore about this at Big Ten Media Days. I said, how much do you turn him loose? And he goes, well, if you're going to do that, then you better have 2 quarterbacks. Right now they don't. Mikey Keene's still banged up. Jaden Davis is number 2, has a long, long way to go to be a Big Ten quarterback, in my opinion. Jake Garcia, who they got from ECU, still learning the offense, everything else. So are you going to let him – are you going to turn him loose, I guess, is my question. Because, man, it's like Sharon said, you know, he may be a big guy, but those linebackers are coming hard. How much are you going to let him run and be who he can be? Or do you just, try to protect him a little bit? It seems to me you're kind of putting a lid on what you can accomplish on the ceiling here.
If Coach Moore and Coach Lindsey have to let him loose in order to get first downs, that means the other guys aren't doing their jobs. And so another way of putting it is he's got to protect himself to a degree. Although he can tuck and run, he shouldn't have to tuck and run. And so if it's play action or RPO, doesn't matter what it is, if we're executing the other 10 guys in the field, then Bryce should not have to look for every escape route and just run for an easy first down. First of all, in high school, he could do that because he's playing against high school kids. And no disrespect to the high school kids, it was just a mismatch physically out there. Those mismatches are going to be far smaller now on the Big Ten football field. So he's not going to have the luxury of just, it's not open, or maybe my tackle or my guard missed a block and I can just bail out of here and easily get a first down. Those days are pretty much going to be behind him. And as we've seen with all the other running quarterbacks over the years, the law of averages is a real pain in the ass sometimes when somebody does catch up to you and you twist an ankle or you get hurt or whatever. So Bryce needs to play quarterback, not the running quarterback, not the Denard Robinson era quarterback. I don't want to see that out of him. I don't think any of us do. We would love to see him be able to do that as a curveball when the defense is playing man and everybody runs off in route protection, and all of a sudden you let him loose. Sure, run a quarterback draw and let him show what he can do, but that cannot be part of the base offense, and it cannot be part of the first down plan just to get down the field. If that's the case, we're in trouble. Yeah,
I'd like to see maybe him keep a few times on the read option, but let him know you are not taking a big hit. You get out there, You go down, don't be fighting for extra yardage. Don't put your shoulder down, anything like that, because there's too much at stake here.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the defense here before I let you go. And Wink Martindale telling us in the spring, he said, the strength of our defense last year was our defensive line. We patterned our defense around it. Obviously, we have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, guys like that. The defensive line is still going to be outstanding. Not going to have the high ceiling guys that you had on the interior, but you've got a couple of edges that have been waiting their turns, and Derek Moore and TJ Guy that I think are going to be great pass rushers. But he said we are going to play more to our linebackers and their strengths. How does that look, in your opinion? Does that mean he did talk about some 3 linebacker looks? What does that mean in terms of pass rush? What does that mean as defense overall when you're playing to that strength of your linebackers?
Well, when you can bring a linebacker from depth and he's an effective pass protection threat because of their size and athleticism and their familiarity with how to effectively run a, let's just say, a linebacker defensive tackle game, or come off the edge of a defensive end defensive tackle twist. And so the comfort level with what he's trying to do scheme-wise with hitting the gaps, when you've got an experienced group of linebackers with the talent that he's got there, you can do all kinds of different things. You can bring them to the offensive line pre-snap and make an offensive lineman wonder which ones are coming and which ones are not coming. And then maybe half of them bail out back into coverage because they have the athleticism to do so. You keep an offensive lineman guessing and wondering what a group of linebackers is going to do, then you slow them down. You make them start wondering where they need to go in their first move. And if I'm playing left guard and I've got a linebacker standing in my A gap and I've got a defensive lineman on my outside eye, I am required to adjust to take that linebacker in the A gap. But if he bails out of there at the ball snap and I got to readjust to get back to help on this guy that's on my outside eye, that puts me in a bad spot. When you have good linebackers, you can do all of those things because they know how to do it and they're athletic enough to do it.
Yeah, they're going to be good. I don't think there's any question that this defense is going to be fantastic. The one question mark is the second, third corners. Jair Hill has really come a long way, they say. And again, as people in the building say, you got to see it on game day. He's got to do everything right on and off the field and mature, but it sounds like he has, and he understands that his teammates are depending on him as the number 1 corner. Zeke Berry, I thought, did a really nice job at the end of last year when he was thrust into that cornerback role. So, and the safety group is deep. It's not as proven. Rod Moore sounds like he might be back earlier than we thought, maybe week 2 or week 3, which is exciting because when you have a guy out there like that to really help with those younger guys and make sure they are where they need to be, I think that's fantastic. So really excited to see what these guys do and how much they play to that defense, how much different the offense looks. If you are still playing, okay, we want to be run heavy and we want to obviously defend the run and play to our defense, how much will they turn them loose, for example, in the Oklahoma game? I don't think we're going to learn a whole lot about New Mexico. I think the first litmus test, right, is Oklahoma.
Yeah, for sure. And because of the environment, because of the pressure, because just the amount of players, the physical talent level of Oklahoma is going to be better than New Mexico. It just is. I mean, that's no disrespect to the New Mexico team, but, you know, just the size, speed, and strength of the Oklahoma team will just flat out be better. So we'll see how they match up. It'll be a night game. It'll be loud down there in Norman, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a difficult situation to be in. We'll see how they do. And oh, by the way, you want to help cornerbacks? Put pressure on the quarterback. And it makes cornerbacks really good. So that's part of the double-edged sword that this defense is going to have to be. Back to the linebackers, when he sends them on blitzes, they got to find their way to get home. And if it's not a linebacker, then a defensive lineman's got to get home, one or the other.
Doug Skene, thank you for your time, and thanks everybody for watching. Please like this if you would, and we will be back Sunday to talk about the Michigan-New Mexico game. Thanks again for being with us.